Hello, and welcome to a quiet journey through one of the most fascinating discoveries about the human mind. Tonight, or today, wherever you are in your journey, we're going to explore something truly remarkable, something that changes how we understand the very nature of mental health. You might be here because you're curious about the mind, or perhaps you're seeking comfort in understanding. Maybe you're simply letting these words wash over you as you drift into restful sleep. Whatever brings you here, you're welcome, you're safe, and together we're going to discover why the mind works the way it does. This is a story about 6 million people. A story about the largest study ever conducted in the history of psychiatry. A story that reveals that when it comes to mental health, we are not as separate as we once believed. Let's begin this gentle exploration together.
Imagine, if you will, a vast tapestry woven from the threads of human experience. Each thread representing a life, a mind navigating the complexities of emotion, thought, and behavior. For so long, we viewed mental disorders as distinct islands, isolated in the sea of the psyche. Depression here, anxiety there, schizophrenia in another distant realm. But what if these islands are connected? What if, beneath the surface, they share the same underlying currents? This is the revelation from a groundbreaking study involving over 6 million individuals. Published in the journal Science in 2019, this research, led by an international team, including scientists from the Psychiatric Genomics Consortium, delved into the genetic foundations of mental health. They analyzed data from massive cohorts across Europe and beyond, examining electronic health records and genetic markers to uncover patterns in how disorders co-occur. The study, known as the cross-disorder group of the Psychiatric Genomics Consortium analysis, but often referred to in discussions as the 6 million person study, due to its unprecedented scale, looked at 10 major psychiatric disorders. These include schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, major depressive disorder, anxiety disorders, post-traumatic stress disorder, obsessive-compulsive disorder, anorexia nervosa, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, autism spectrum disorder, and Tourette's syndrome. What they found was profound. Rather than being entirely separate, these disorders overlap in their genetic risks. In fact, the research showed that many of these conditions share common genetic variants that influence brain function across multiple disorders. For instance, genes involved in neurotransmitter regulation, like those affecting dopamine and serotonin pathways, appear to play roles in both schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. This overlap isn't just genetic. The study revealed that people diagnosed with one disorder are far more likely to experience another. Comorbidity, the co-occurrence of disorders, was strikingly high. For example, someone with major depression has a significantly elevated risk of developing anxiety or even PTSD. The data from these 6 million lives painted a picture of a shared vulnerability, a common genetic architecture that underlies what we once thought were unrelated conditions. Let's linger here for a moment. Think about the implications. If disorders overlap, then treatments might too. A medication that helps with depression could offer relief for anxiety because they stem from similar roots. This study shifts our perspective from silos to a spectrum where mental health is a continuum influenced by shared factors. Diving deeper, the researchers used advanced statistical methods like genome-wide association studies, or GWAS, to identify specific loci, points in the DNA where variations correlate with multiple disorders. They found 109 genetic loci associated with at least 2 disorders, highlighting how the brain's wiring, its synaptic plasticity, and calcium signaling are common threads.
One key insight was the clustering of disorders into three main groups based on genetic correlations. First, the compulsive group, including anorexia, OCD, and Tourette's, sharing genes related to repetitive behaviors. Second, the mood and psychotic group, encompassing depression, bipolar, and schizophrenia, linked to emotional regulation. Third, the neurodevelopmental group, with ADHD, autism, and others tied to early brain development. This clustering helps explain why someone with ADHD might also struggle with anxiety, or why bipolar often accompanies depression. The study's scale, 6 million people, provided the statistical power to detect these subtle overlaps that smaller studies might miss. Data came from sources like the UK Biobank and Danish health registries, ensuring diversity in age, gender, and background. But why does this matter for you as you listen and relax? Understanding overlap brings hope. It means that research into one disorder benefits others. It fosters a more holistic approach to mental health care, where therapies like cognitive behavioral therapy can address multiple symptoms at once. The study also touched on environmental factors, though primarily genetic, noting how shared genes interact with life experiences to manifest overlaps. Stress, trauma, even sleep patterns can amplify these genetic predispositions, linking back to how rest influences mental resilience. As we ease into this knowledge, feel the weight of misunderstanding lift. Mental disorders are not isolated battles, but interconnected paths in the mind's landscape. This 6 million person endeavor illuminates that we're all part of a larger human story. Now, as your mind absorbs these gentle truths, let's prepare to delve even further into the details of this remarkable study. But first, take a deep breath and let relaxation flow through you. The methodology behind this study was meticulous. Researchers aggregated anonymized data from over 200,000 cases of diagnosed disorders and compared them to controls in the millions. They employed polygenic risk scores to predict the likelihood of one disorder based on another's genetics. Results showed strong correlations, like a 0.74 genetic correlation between schizophrenia and bipolar, meaning over 70% of the genetic influence is shared.
Similarly, depression and anxiety shared a correlation of 0.75, underscoring their frequent overlap. These numbers from such a vast sample provide robust evidence that mental health is not categorical but dimensional, with symptoms blending across boundaries. Visualize a network of nodes, each a disorder, connected by lines of varying thickness representing genetic overlap. Thicker lines between mood disorders, thinner to neurodevelopmental ones. This map, derived from the study, guides future research toward targeted interventions. One fascinating aspect is how these findings challenge the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, or DSM, which categorizes disorders separately. The study suggests a need for transdiagnostic approaches, treating the underlying mechanisms rather than labels. As you listen, perhaps with eyes closed, imagine the minds of those 6 million contributing to this enlightenment. Their data, anonymized and protected, weaves a safety net for future generations. The lead researchers, like Jordan Smaller from Harvard, emphasized that this overlap points to brain circuits involved in reward, fear, and cognition being affected across disorders. Genes like CACNA1C for calcium channels appear in multiple conditions, influencing neuronal firing. This genetic sharing extends to neurological disorders, but the study focused on psychiatric ones, revealing why comorbidities like depression with ADHD are so common, affecting up to 50% of cases in some populations. In terms of implications for treatment, the study opens doors to repurposing drugs. For example, antipsychotics used for schizophrenia might help in bipolar due to shared pathways. As we continue this serene exploration, feel free to let your thoughts wander or simply rest. The mind, with its overlaps, is resilient, capable of healing when understood. To appreciate the scale, consider that previous studies had thousands or tens of thousands participants. This one, with 6 million, including family pedigrees, allowed for heritability estimates, showing that genetics account for 40 to 80% of risk across disorders, with overlaps boosting those figures. Family studies within the data showed that relatives of someone with one disorder have elevated risks for others, like a sibling of a schizophrenic patient being more prone to depression. The study's cross-cultural aspect, drawing from diverse registries, suggests these overlaps are universal, not limited to one population. As your body relaxes deeper into comfort, absorb that this knowledge empowers, reducing stigma by showing mental health as a shared human experience. We're only beginning this journey, but already the light of understanding illuminates the overlaps that connect us all.
The question that changed everything. For decades, doctors and scientists have noticed something puzzling. A person comes in struggling with depression. Later, they develop anxiety, then perhaps post-traumatic stress. The diagnoses pile up like layers, one upon another. And everyone wondered why. Why does this happen so often? Why do mental health conditions seem to travel in groups? Why do they overlap, intertwine, and coexist within the same person? This puzzle has roots deep in the history of psychiatry. As far back as the early 20th century, clinicians like Emil Kraepelin, who classified disorders into categories, observed that patients rarely fit neatly into one box. Schizophrenia might blend with manic episodes, resembling what we now call bipolar disorder. By the 1970s, with the advent of the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, the puzzle grew. Studies, small at first, showed high rates of comorbidity, but without large-scale data, the why remained elusive. Imagine, for a moment, a beautiful tapestry. From far away, you see distinct patterns, separate colors, individual threads. But when you move closer, you discover that many of these threads are woven together, sharing the same fibers, connected in ways you couldn't see from a distance. This is what scientists discovered about mental health through the lens of the 6 million person study. The overlaps aren't random. They're rooted in shared genetic and biological foundations that the study illuminated with unprecedented clarity. Let's explore this tapestry thread by thread. In the study, researchers found that genetic correlations explain much of the overlap. For example, the genetic risk for major depression shares about 75% with anxiety disorders, meaning the same variants in our DNA can predispose to both. This isn't just numbers, it's lives. A person with ADHD, from the study's data, is twice as likely to develop depression
because neurodevelopmental pathways intersect with mood regulation. The numbers that tell a story. Let me share some gentle truths with you. More than half of all people diagnosed with one psychiatric condition will receive at least one more diagnosis during their lifetime. 41% will meet the criteria for 4 or more different conditions. 4 or more. That's from the vast dataset of over 6 million anonymized records spanning diagnoses across lifetimes. In the study, comorbidity rates were striking. For schizophrenia, over 60% of individuals also had mood disorders like bipolar or depression. Anxiety co-occurred with PTSD in nearly half of cases examined. These aren't isolated islands of illness, they're more like a connected archipelago, islands that share the same underwater foundation of genetic variants and brain circuitry. The study, drawing from registries like those in Denmark and Sweden, showed that this archipelago forms early. Genetic factors, heritable across families, mean that if one sibling has autism, another might have ADHD or anxiety due to overlapping risks. And for the longest time, we didn't understand why. Smaller studies hinted at it, but the 6 million scale provided the power to see the patterns clearly. Environmental triggers, like stress, can activate these shared vulnerabilities, but the foundation is genetic, as the research revealed.
Consider the implications for rest and sleep. Overlaps in disorders often disrupt the mind's natural rhythms. Anxiety bleeding into depression can lead to insomnia, a common thread in the tapestry. Understanding this brings comfort, knowing that healing one strand may strengthen others. As we contemplate this puzzle, feel the pieces gently fitting together. The mind, with its overlaps, is complex, yet beautifully interconnected. Diving deeper, the study highlighted specific overlaps. Bipolar disorder shares 74% genetic correlation with schizophrenia, explaining why manic episodes can mimic psychotic symptoms. OCD clusters with anorexia, both tied to compulsive circuits in the brain. This puzzle, once baffling, now unfolds, revealing that mental health is not a collection of separate storms, but a shared sea where waves from one influence the next. In historical context, Freud spoke of neuroses overlapping, but without genetics, it was theory. Now, with GWAS data from the study, we see the biological truth. Let these numbers and stories wash over you like a calm tide, easing the mind toward understanding and rest.
6 million stories. In December of 2025, something extraordinary was published, a study unlike any other in the history of mental health research. Scientists from around the world working together as the Psychiatric Genomics Consortium analyzed the DNA of more than 6 million people. 6 million people. Think about that for a moment. 6 million unique individuals, 6 million stories, 6 million minds, each with their own experiences, their own struggles, their own journeys. This massive collaboration involved over 500 researchers from institutions across continents, pooling genomic data from diverse populations to ensure the findings reflect humanity's breadth. Among these 6 million, more than 1 million
had been diagnosed with at least one psychiatric condition. 5 million others served as a comparison, having no diagnosed mental health condition. The data came from biobanks like the UK Biobank, Estonian Biobank, and others, combining genome-wide association studies, or GWAS, from hundreds of thousands of cases across Europe, North America, and beyond. The researchers looked at 14 different conditions: depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, autism, ADHD, OCD, anorexia, Tourette syndrome, PTSD, and several forms of substance use disorders, including alcohol, cannabis, opioid, and other dependencies.
What they found changed everything. The genetic overlaps revealed a shared architecture, challenging traditional diagnostic boundaries and offering new paths for understanding and treatment. This study's scale provided the power to detect subtle signals that smaller efforts missed, illuminating how comorbidities arise from common genetic roots. The 5 families. Instead of 14 completely separate conditions, the scientists discovered that these disorders group together into 5 families. 5 genetic families. Imagine 5 great rivers, each river flowing in its own direction, but all of them drawing from the same underground aquifer, the same source beneath the surface. These families emerged from multivariate genetic analyses like factor analysis on pairwise correlations, showing how disorders cluster based on shared heritability. Let me walk you gently through each family, exploring their shared essence. Family 1, the internalizing family. The first family includes conditions that turn inward: depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder. These 3 conditions share something remarkable. About 90% of their genetic risk is shared between them. 90%. The study quantified genetic correlations as high as 0.9 between MDD and ANX, and similarly strong with PTSD. This means that if you carry genetic factors that make you vulnerable to depression, you also carry very similar factors that could lead to anxiety or PTSD. They're not the same condition. Each has its own character, its own experience, but beneath the surface, they share almost all of their genetic foundation, often involving genes in stress response and emotional regulation, like those in the HPA axis. It's like 3 different songs played on the same instrument. The melodies differ, but the strings are the same. This overlap explains why someone recovering from trauma might experience both PTSD flashbacks and depressive episodes or anxious ruminations. Family 2, the psychotic family. The second family includes 2 conditions that psychiatry has long viewed as very different: schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. For decades, doctors rarely, if ever, diagnosed someone with both conditions. They were thought to be entirely separate. But this study revealed something stunning. These 2 conditions share about 66 to 70% of their genetic risk, with correlations around 0.66 to 0.70. Genetically speaking, they are more similar than they are unique. This doesn't mean they're the same condition, but it does mean that what we call schizophrenia and what we call bipolar disorder may be 2 different expressions of very similar underlying biology, involving dopamine pathways and synaptic pruning. The findings support a continuum model, where psychotic features in bipolar link back to schizophrenia's genetics. Family 3. The compulsive family. The third family brings together conditions characterized by repetition, by ritual, by patterns that feel difficult to break. Obsessive-compulsive disorder, anorexia nervosa, and to a lesser extent, Tourette syndrome. At first glance, these might seem unrelated, but when you look at the genetic level, you see connections, patterns, shared vulnerabilities with correlations around 0.4 to 0.6. All three involve difficulties with stopping certain behaviors, intrusive thoughts, repetitive actions, a mind that gets stuck in loops tied to basal ganglia and habit formation genes. And now we know that this tendency has genetic roots, that these conditions share, explaining comorbidities like OCD with eating disorders. Family 4, the neurodevelopmental family. The fourth family includes conditions that typically emerge early in life: autism spectrum disorder and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. These conditions affect how the brain develops, how it processes the world, how attention and social connection unfold from childhood. Again, genetic analysis reveals that these conditions, while distinct in their effects, share common biological pathways with correlations up to 0.7 involving early neuronal migration and synaptic genes. They represent different ways that early brain development can diverge from typical patterns, often overlapping in clinical presentations. Family 5, the substance use family. The fifth family encompasses disorders related to alcohol and other substances like cannabis, opioids, and more. These conditions, too, have their own genetic signature, their own shared vulnerabilities, clustering with correlations among substance types around 0.5 to 0.8. Understanding this helps us see that substance use disorders, like all the others, have biological roots, genetic factors. They're not simply failures of willpower or moral weakness, but involve reward pathways and impulsivity genes. They're conditions with genetic underpinnings, just like all the others, and often co-occur with other families, like internalizing disorders. The 428 genetic variants. But the discovery didn't stop at these 5 families.
The researchers identified 428 specific genetic variants that are associated with more than one psychiatric condition. 428 genetic locations that influence multiple aspects of mental health through pleiotropy, where one variant affects multiple traits. They also found 101 hotspots on our chromosomes, places where these shared genetic variants cluster together like stars in a constellation. These hotspots are areas of intense activity, places where the genetic code has profound effects on how the brain develops and functions, often enriching for neuronal genes like those in glutamate signaling. This map of the genetic landscape offers hope for targeted therapies that address shared mechanisms across disorders. As we absorb this wonder, let it bring peace, knowing the mind's complexities are being unveiled, one gentle discovery at a time.
The signal senders. The second type of cell is called an excitatory neuron. Excitatory neurons are the signal senders. They activate other neurons. They get things moving. They're like the accelerators in your brain's communication network. The study found that in schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, genes affecting excitatory neurons are particularly important. These neurons, when overactive, or when their regulation is off, can lead to the racing thoughts, the intense energy, the perceptual differences characteristic of these conditions. So you see, the genetic similarities between schizophrenia and bipolar disorder express themselves through effects on the same type of brain cell. Two conditions, different experiences, but similar biology underneath.
The myelin makers. The first are called oligodendrocytes. Oligodendrocytes are special cells in your brain. Their job is to make myelin. And myelin is like insulation for the wiring of your brain. Imagine electrical wires in a house. Without insulation, the electricity leaks out. Signals become slow, inefficient, garbled. Oligodendrocytes wrap your nerve fibers in layers of myelin. This allows electrical signals to travel fast and clean from one part of your brain to another. Now here's what the study found. In people with depression, anxiety, and PTSD, genes that affect oligodendrocytes are often different. These differences may affect how well the brain's wiring stays insulated, how efficiently different brain regions communicate with each other. It's like having slightly frayed cables. The messages still get through, but they may be slower or less clear. And over time, this might contribute to the feelings of sadness, worry, or disconnection. This is especially true in an area called the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for complex emotions, planning, and decision-making. When oligodendrocytes are stressed or their function changes, this region may not work quite as smoothly.
The signal senders. The second type of cell is called an excitatory neuron. Excitatory neurons are the signal senders. They activate other neurons. They get things moving. They're like the accelerators in your brain's communication network. The study found that in schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, genes affecting excitatory neurons are particularly important. These neurons, when overactive, or when their regulation is off, can lead to the racing thoughts, the intense energy, the perceptual differences characteristic of these conditions. So you see, the genetic similarities between schizophrenia and bipolar disorder express themselves through effects on the same type of brain cell. Two conditions, different experiences, but similar biology underneath.
When genes turn on. The study revealed something else fascinating. Different genetic factors matter at different times in life. Some of the shared genes are active very early, even before birth, during fetal development, when the brain is first being assembled. These early acting genes help determine the fundamental architecture of your brain, how many cells, where they connect, the basic wiring that will serve you for life. Other genes become more important later, during adolescence, in adulthood, as the brain continues to change and adapt. This helps explain why some conditions, like autism and ADHD, typically appear in childhood, while others, like schizophrenia, often emerge in late adolescence or early adulthood. The timing of when genes are expressed matters just as much as which genes are involved.
You are not alone. So, what does all of this mean for you? First, if you've ever felt the weight of multiple diagnoses, if you've wondered, why me? Why do I struggle with so many things? This research offers an answer. It's not that you're broken in multiple ways. It's that the genetic factors you carry express themselves in multiple ways. You're not accumulating separate problems. You're experiencing different facets of the same underlying biology. And here's something truly important. This means that having multiple diagnoses is not unusual. It's not a sign of being uniquely troubled. It's actually the most common pattern. More people have multiple diagnoses than have just one. You are not alone.
You are not an exception. You are part of a broader pattern that we're only now beginning to understand. The biology is real. Gently validating. Second, this research confirms that mental health conditions are not all in your head in the way that phrase is usually meant. They're not imaginary. They're not weaknesses. They're not failures of character. They're biological, genetic, real as any other medical condition. Psychiatry is the only medical specialty that has no definitive laboratory tests. A doctor can't simply draw your blood and diagnose depression. But genetics is changing that. Slowly, we're understanding the biological underpinnings, the genetic factors, the brain changes. This doesn't mean that environment doesn't matter. Of course it does. Stress, trauma, life experiences all play a role. But beneath those experiences, there are biological substrates, genetic vulnerabilities and protections, real, measurable biological differences. And understanding this can be deeply freeing. Hope for the future. Third, this research opens doors to new treatments. If multiple conditions share genetic roots, then perhaps a single treatment could help with multiple conditions at once. Instead of 4 different medications for 4 different diagnoses, perhaps in the future there could be treatments that address the shared biology underneath. This is called cross-disorder treatment, and it's becoming an active area of research. Scientists are now looking at whether medications that help with depression might also help with anxiety, and whether treatments for bipolar disorder might benefit aspects of schizophrenia. The answers aren't here yet, but the path is becoming clearer. A new understanding. Fourth, this research invites us to reconsider how we think about and talk about mental health. The current system divides conditions into distinct categories. Depression is one thing, anxiety is another, bipolar is separate still. But these findings suggest that nature doesn't recognize these boundaries, not in the way our diagnostic manuals have drawn them. Instead, mental health exists on continuums, with genetic factors that blend together, overlap, create unique combinations in each person. You might have mostly internalizing features, but also some compulsive traits, a bit of neurodevelopmental difference. You're not a collection of separate disorders. You're a unique individual with a unique combination of genetic and environmental factors expressing themselves in your experience. And perhaps in the future, instead of saying, I have depression and anxiety and OCD, you might say, I experience this particular combination of mental health features. A subtle shift, but perhaps a more accurate one. The mosaic of the mind. Let's zoom out now to see the bigger picture. The human mind is perhaps the most complex structure in the known universe. Billions of neurons, trillions of connections, tens of thousands of genes, all working together to create consciousness, emotion, thought, memory, dreams. It's a miracle, really, that it works at all. That from this biological complexity emerges you, your thoughts, your feelings, your unique way of experiencing the world. And within this complexity, there is variation, tremendous, beautiful, meaningful variation. Some brains are wired for intense focus, others for broad awareness. Some experience emotions deeply, vividly, others in more muted tones. This variation isn't good or bad, it simply is. But sometimes this variation creates suffering, difficulty, struggle, and that's when we call it a disorder. Genetics and compassion.
Understanding the genetics of mental health doesn't mean accepting suffering as inevitable. But it does mean recognizing that mental health challenges are not personal failures. If someone has a genetic predisposition to depression, that doesn't mean they're doing life wrong. It means their biology makes certain experiences more likely. And this understanding can foster compassion. Compassion for yourself if you struggle with your mental health. Compassion for others who may be fighting battles you cannot see. We're all working with the genetic hand we were dealt, making the best of our particular neurobiological circumstances. The research continues. Remarkable as it is not the end of the story. It's a milestone, a major one, but the research continues. The Psychiatric Genomics Consortium is still working, still analyzing data, still searching for deeper understanding. They're looking at how these genetic findings relate to treatment response, why some people respond well to certain medications while others don't. They're exploring how genetic factors interact with life experiences, how stress, trauma, relationships shape the expression of these genes. They're developing something called polygenic risk scores, ways to estimate, based on many genes together, someone's relative risk for different conditions. This isn't about predicting the future, but about understanding vulnerability, about potentially offering help earlier. A journey, not a destination. Understanding the genetics of mental health is a journey, not a destination. Each discovery opens doors to new questions. Each answer reveals new mysteries. But slowly, piece by piece, we're building a more complete picture of how the mind works, of why some minds struggle more than others. And with that understanding comes hope. Hope for better treatments, for earlier interventions, for reduced stigma. For a world where mental health is understood as clearly as physical health. As you rest, and so as we come to the end of this journey, let these ideas settle gently. Remember that mental health conditions share genetic roots, that having multiple challenges is not unusual, it's the most common pattern. Remember that these conditions have biological foundations, real, measurable, genetic and cellular differences. And remember that research continues, that understanding grows, that hope is justified. If you're here to sleep, let these thoughts drift away. There's nothing you need to remember, nothing you need to do. Just be here, in this moment, safe, at peace. Your brain, whatever its particular wiring, is working to keep you alive, to let you experience this moment, to process these words. That's enough. You are enough. Rest well, knowing that science sees you, understands you, and continues working toward a future where mental health is as clearly understood and compassionately treated as any other aspect of human health. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Sleep well.